I believe the year was 1994 or 1995. Chris Rock was not necessarily a young comedian any longer. He had his time on Saturday Night Live, very briefly on Living Color before that show went off the air, and he was a floundering comic that was doing tour dates, basically club dates, improvs, funny bones, shit like that. His goal was basically to get to the point where he wouldn't have to do radio any longer, which is the comedians, you go into a town, you do morning radio at some shitty pop station advertising the week, and you're there 7, 8 a.m. for drive time, trying to hustle every seat that you can. Rock basically didn't want to do that. Things had been falling apart for a great while. And he was at the Comedy Store prepping what would become his first HBO special, his first full-length HBO special, and he ran into Andrew Dice Clay. Now, the way Chris Rock tells it, Andrew Dice Clay always has advice, whether good or bad. Andrew Dice will sit you down and tell you what you need to do. And it's hard to ignore somebody of Dice's stature, somebody who was and is as polarizing as Dice was in his time. However, somebody who sold out Madison Square Garden numerous times, was the producer of the first pay-per-view comedy special that made millions of dollars. He's a legend. He's a fucking legend. He asked Rock what was down the pipeline, and Rock told him that he was getting ready to do an HBO special. He was just working out. He was just trying out new shit. And Dice got the sense that he wasn't taking it as seriously as he should have. Rock asked him for advice, and Dice said, "Watch Rocky." And Chris Rock just took a step back, and he didn't understand. He said, "Watch Rocky. If you watch Rocky, you'll remember every reason we got into this." Rock watched it, and it changed everything about the way he approached the special. It changed the attitude, the belief. He started training really hard for what would become Bring the Pain. And it was Rock's last chance at glory. And Bring the Pain would prove to be this monumental moment in stand-up. With that little bit of advice, Chris Rock realized what was necessary in order to overcome the expectations, but also to find something within himself that would make the special the success that it was. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because I believe that the power of movies is one of the most important inspiring aspects of our lives. Just about everybody that I know who cares really has a film that sticks with them, that inspires them, that finds something within them that is worth fostering and growing. Rocky is a note by note, paint by the numbers, very predictable type of storytelling. It's manipulative in a way that I find very insulting in most regards. But there is something about this film. I don't know if it's Sylvester Stallone's 1976 hunger to make it in the industry, or the peripheral characters that I believe are so beautifully realized, in part through the writing, but also through the performances of Talia Shire, Burt Young. Carl Weathers and mostly for me at least Burgess Meredith. That's a fucking no-brainer. I will say this much: I love this film. I love the first film in the series. I enjoy the second film. I have a good time with the third one. The fourth is an embarrassment. The fifth one shouldn't be talked about. And Rocky Balboa brings it all together. I ignore the Creed films because they're out of pocket. They're different. But I know that this is not for everybody. And it's really interesting to be sitting here talking to you, Mr. Chavez, somebody who I respect and have bantered back and forth over films, their purpose, and what they are able to achieve. So I don't know what your opinion is. I have a sense of how you might feel, but I'm really interested in what you think of this first film, and then slowly what you think of the following films in the series. So please give us a little bit of an insight into into how you break these down.
Well, I mean, violence excites us, so there's that. There's an idea of watching a nobody work his will, right? Beyond the bleeding, beyond the bruises. It's they call boxing the sweet science. It's there's an agony and an ecstasy to it. And I'm not an avid boxing fan, but I like boxing, and I really got into it through watching Muhammad Ali and watching his fights, and then watching other stuff. And I like a lot of like boxing documentaries and stuff like that. And the idea is that we like to watch two men inflict violence upon one another, and we want to see people punch each other in the head, get knocked down, and try to get back up, or actually get back up. And in that sense, it's kind of, there's a Passion of the Christ element to it. There's a resurrection theme to it. But the thing is that we want the good guy. We want the violent, good guy to suffer for us and to ultimately to triumph for us. But I always want Rocky to lose. And he never does.
He loses that first fight.
No, he doesn't.
Not as far as, well, the scorecards say what they say. Do you want him to fail? Do you want him to not go the distance? Do you want him to get dropped and everything?
I want him to lose. I want Rocky to lose. I just don't think this film, this story, is very unimaginative and very unchallenging. As you said, it's very paint by the numbers. I understand the appeal of it, and I understand the manipulative aspect that you also mentioned. I just don't think that it's kind of like the way it's designed. There's nowhere really for Rocky to go but up, and that's the whole point. At no point do I ever think that Rocky's gonna die. So it's kind of like, if you're like supposedly like no one, a nobody, what's at stake? And beyond that, what's at stake in terms of, I never see the dark night of the soul of Rocky. I see the film as a publicity stunt, in the same way that when they're in that office and Apollo Creed comes up with the idea of, hey, everybody loves an underdog story. We're going to give this underdog a shot. It's going to be amazing. We're going to do it. It's on the bicentennial. And this is a great idea. That's basically, he's pitching the film that he's in. at that point. Um, that is the film. It kind of, we started the month with Dune 2 and a hero that we critiqued. Then we went to Lawrence of Arabia with a hero that we critiqued. Then we did Popeye, which led us to this. Popeye, for those of you who listen to this chronologically, if I know sometimes it's like a randomized thing on the app, but not my cup of tea as a film. But we were still talking about different aspects of the film and that it's a well-made film, good performances, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I described basically Popeye as a character that kind of reflects the way I think America sees itself.
Yeah.
And this is more of that. It's the good-hearted hero, the lovable loser. He's dumb, but he's tough. If only, he trains hard enough, he'll be a champion because it's inspiration and perspiration. It's the American dream. You get the girl, blah, blah, blah. But the conflict is always external. It's someone else. And you do need an external conflict in a basic film. You need an antagonist. But there aren't dimensions to this film. There aren't layers. He's never tempted. He never has to deal with his own potential. You get a sense that beyond, like, is it that he doesn't think he's good enough? Is it that is there a part of him that doesn't want to be champion, or is that just something that you're not getting a rematch? I don't want one. I don't get a sense for because he's a hero, he has to have the potential for evil. But the bad guy essence, not even evil in this film, because I don't even think evil exists in the Rocky world. It's always externalized. And I mean, I think the culture in the United States was ready for something like that, because we're in the 70s. Society's dealing with this political turmoil and complexity, and Watergate, Vietnam, punk rock is emergent as a result of all of these issues. Fucking Taxi Driver, same year. Network, same year. For part two, it's like Apocalypse Now. And I think that although I see that the culture was ready or needed kind of like a break, I see this as this feel-good dumbing down precursor to the Reagan era jingoism that would dominate the 80s. And this kind of, America is the land of opportunity. I don't even see irony in that fucking statement. Like, is there a recognition of the irony of that in this film? Because it's like the aspect of exploitation doesn't come up. I think, America sees itself as Rocky. It's a hopeful film. But hope has to come out of despair. And I don't see despair in this film. I don't think it goes low enough. It's too simple.
Well, of course it's simple. It's very simple. The poverty is there. The struggle is there. The problem is that Rocky Balboa is not a realistic character as far as anybody the good-natured dolt who is just somehow above all of it. I mean, there's angst in the character, there's the sadness in the character, but what really works for me are Burt Young's the Polly character and Burgess Meredith. And I think, that's kind of, anybody who has listened to this show would know that those would be the two characters that I would probably be more drawn to in the stories that are within them. For me, this film is not so much about that fairy tale that you're describing. And all of that shit is there, no doubt. Everything that you've just described is there. But there's a different angle that you can look at it. And the angle that I look at it from is wasted potential, bad choices, and not giving your all in certain... living this life without pushing towards what you're capable of. The fantasy of it is... What?
Even... I'm sorry to cut you off.
No.
Even that what you're describing is the fairy tale, because that's this American like self-help industry message, which is like you have all of this untapped potential, but you just have to eat spinach, or you just have to have the right ideology, or you just have to have the right belief system, or you just have to have the right religion, or you just have to have the right guru, or you just have to have the right girlfriend, or you just have to have the right clothes, or you just have to have the right music. If you have that, then that'll help you achieve blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot more, and I'm not even talking about how things like supposedly really are. I think yes, they're more complex than just those simple kind of approaches. But even in an unrealistic sense, it's kind of like if you're gonna have an unrealistic hero, someone who's like this, if you're gonna have to have a Jesus figure, the Jesus figure has to fucking like suffer way more than the average Joe, and so I just don't think the arc goes high enough.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go low enough so that it can go high enough. But go ahead.
Well, a lot of that is insinuated in the backstory of him being 30 years old, and you take into account a fighter's life and a fighter's professional life. I mean, how many 30-year-olds are going to reach that point where they're going to be able to compete on the level? I mean, it's bullshit. It's a complete fucking fantasy. It's not possible. Nobody. But it speaks to this idea of self-realization, and I get what you're saying. You're
very
right.
American.
Yeah, it is very American, but that doesn't change the fact that this is a film that's loved worldwide, because I think there's a part of everyone out there, just damn near everybody out there, who wants to believe that they still have a little bit in them that's going to take them across the finish line. That's going to make it make sense. You see it in acting, painting, writing, fucking comedy. You see it in all these different forms of people who feel that they either didn't give it enough or didn't get the opportunities that would have given them the success that they needed. I mean, I know that I've played back the 20 years of my life in LA asking, where could I have turned left instead of right? Where would that have taken me? What if I had done this? What if I had quit this? What if I had dove into this? And the fact of the matter is, you don't know. Rocky is this fantasy that tells you that maybe you could have, and it has just a tinkling of realism enough in it to make you think, yeah, that might have been possible. And there's a there's an emotional investment in both the film and in life where you can step away and say, I either gave it my all or I didn't. Now, when you fail at something, it's real easy to say, I didn't give it my all. But sometimes you have to be realistic and you look at what was required, what was needed. And you take into the fact, feeding, clothing myself, putting a roof over my head. The dream isn't always the thing that will provide that. And I think what makes this a film that, no doubt, I think a lot of people love this movie for, everybody has their reasons for something, for an emotional attachment. I think a lot of people love this movie for the wrong reason, or for the wrong
Which
reasons.
is what?
In that, it's it is that self-help thing that you describe.
Yeah, they like the Hallmark card of
Yeah,
it.
they like that.
The message.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
The truth.
I mean,
Yeah.
who's not to like it? Why not? I mean, I told you that we both know that the real Rocky is Travis Bickle.
Yeah.
Because this is a revenge story. I'm gonna fucking show the world that I'm great. No one sees it. Fuck all of you. No one fucking believes in me. I don't even fucking believe in me. And I'm fucking 30 years old. And here I am, I'm a fucking incel, probably, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm fucking dumb. It's that, like, the moment when Fredo when the Godfather's like, I'm smart.
Mm-hmm. I'm not dumb like people think I'm smart.
Yeah, I'm not dumb. And it's like, and what happens? In this case, it's like, no, I'm gonna fucking show him, and I'm gonna show everybody.
Yeah.
Then there's something else there, versus the aw shucks, because the aw shucks, it's like there's no risk there. It's kind of like, we want something that has some dimensions, and we want
Sure.
there has to be a point where it's like the pursuit for that which you love can lead to your own destruction. And out of that, you have to wrestle with, do I want to use this for something constructive or something destructive? And your training is not, I mean, people who are so-called great, and the people who use that thing of like, you want to be realized and you want to like blah, blah, blah. It's not because they're inspired. It's because they're obsessed. They're obsessed to a degree that those around them suffer, because those around them become secondary to that person's obsession. That person's passion is that person's obsession. And it's like, it's that fire that lights the way, the fire that warms you, but the fire that also consumes everything. That's not in this movie. Travis Bickle is the guy who's like, oh, I'm gonna fucking I'm gonna get revenge. And he ultimately, he can't get the right girl. He's trying to save the fucking wrong girl, who maybe is the right girl. Ends up doing the American killing spree, and then ends up becoming the American hero. Rocky, I see it as a revenge story that never got made as a revenge story. Revenge for no one seeing his so-called greatness. Achievement is a form of revenge. revenge against not having achieved previously. That's what I want.
But that's not the film that they were making. That's not the film. I mean, there's some
they were
validity
making
in
the
what you're
Hallmark
saying.
card. And I even I'll give it credit for being a fuck you to all of the cynical shit that's out there. Just in terms of being contrarian, it's like if everyone's fucking like making a sad face and you smile, that's a fuck you to everything, and I applaud that. But Hallmark is not challenging. The Happy Meal is not. It's an entertainment movie.
It's absolutely an entertainment movie, and that's what it exists at. It's a feel good film. But I think there's a layer to it that makes it a little bit deeper. Not monumentally. Please believe me, I do not think it deserved Best Picture in '76. I didn't think Stallone deserved Best Actor. I didn't believe he didn't win it, but you know.
This goes into the shit that we've talked about.
Yeah.
It's like this is the kind of the thing of what the Oscars are there for.
Yeah.
It's a way of soothing. It's a film that soothes, and there's a part of me. I mean, I see all of that, and look, like I have films that I think are inspiring too. I think that maybe they're a little bit more imaginative or whatever. This is not my thing, and look, I mean, like beyond it's not my thing. I think that Stallone is, and I mean, I want to keep going on this route, and then we can talk about the positives. That I think Stallone is very interesting. I think he's very watchable. I think he is he brings this likability to Rocky that is. I mean, I think there are diminishing returns on that, but
if there has ever been an example of diminishing returns, it's this fucking series. Yeah.
But in the beginning, it's kind of like.
Well, that's okay, something.
Like
okay, let's talk a little bit about. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'll get back to this.
No, fine. Let's just go, and then we'll swing back, and we'll go wherever we go.
Well, the thing was that I wanted to say, if the film had ended right there, Rocky losing the battle on the scorecards, but proving to himself that he could go the distance, that he wasn't a bum, that he shocked the world as they talk about, as Mickey talks about in the movie. If the film had ended there, you would not have had diminishing returns, and it wouldn't have become a parody of itself, because each film gets a little bit worse. I think Rocky Balboa brings it around, and I enjoy it, but Rocky 2 has moments that I like, but for the most part, not very good. Rocky 3 is kind of ridiculous. The fourth film is just a fucking embarrassment, regardless of what anybody says.
This is the fourth film. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Sorry.
The fourth film is that's the trajectory that you get to. Like you get to fucking at least in the third one, it embraces. It evolves into and embraces what it was born out of, which is a ridiculous fucking story.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's adding elements of frenzy in the ridiculousness, this insane theatrical quality of professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately, by the time you get to the fourth one, it's kind of like professional wrestling. It's a cultural symbols of cultural war and like an actual war, but in the ring.
Yeah.
And so even though those films are there's a silly aspect to them. I think they're also, it's kind of like how that's where we were going based on the first one.
Well,
because
that's
the first one is just a little bit like those are more blatant in what they're doing.
Yeah.
This one, the beginning is just kind of like, you're not really, unless you look at the context of of the mid to late 70s, like you don't know where it fits. And I mean, I don't know that I can't look at Rocky without looking at everything around Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
And on its own, I just don't, I don't see it as having a really great impact, other than as this kind of remedy to the cynicism of the 70s. And of course, I'm speaking as the voice of cynicism in this episode.
Well, that's me. That's me too. I mean, I'm a cynic. I'm a pessimist, and yet I'm really drawn in by this movie. But I like the story of losers. I like when losers lose, and I like when they win. I like the idea of somebody who doesn't have a shot in hell of doing something, actually proving something to themselves, and that's the thing. I mean, in the Rocky story, I don't see it so much as him fighting the world and trying to. I look at it almost purely as him trying to prove something to himself, to validate, and that's where the cultural baggage that you bring to a film plays so heavily in how you interpret it and how it resonates with you. Is that anybody who has taken the chances that we've taken and have found ourselves down the line not successful at it, you're gonna play those fights in your head again. You're gonna say, where could I have done it differently? What could I have done? Some people might say that in some cases it's sour grapes by telling yourself, well, I didn't really want what I thought I wanted. But there's something about when you watch this and you see somebody achieve, and I watch the movies, and I think the film, as much as I like the last film, and enjoyable as some of the middle films are, Stallone would have been better off to just end the film with that loss to Apollo, with that embracing of his girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, finding love, proving something to himself. The movie's not really about boxing. It's a love story, and it's a self-realization story about a man finally coming to terms with his own potential, his own limitations, and his own power to overcome those things. And I like that. As ridiculous as it is, as moronic as so much of the film is, and especially, I was watching the second film last night, and watching the fight scenes, I couldn't help but sit there going, Jesus Christ, who the fuck are they kidding? Who the fuck could take a beating like that? Nobody could take a beating like that. And it becomes even more pronounced in the third and fourth films. The series itself doesn't do a whole lot of favors to the character. Yeah, people love it. Yeah, it's become this cultural, iconic thing. There are people to this day that run up those Philadelphia steps and humming Gonna Fly to themselves. And now, is it stupid? I don't know. I don't know if I would do it if I was in Philadelphia. Not with these old knees, but 10 years ago, maybe, like a fucking moron, I would have been doing it too.
I'm gonna give you a chicken to chase.
Yeah.
Or I'm actually a rooster because you're Mexican.
It makes sense to me.
I'm gonna put a rooster in your fucking yard. Put a beer in your hand, and I'm gonna fucking make you chase a rooster.
Just put some spurs on his legs, and we're ready to party. I mean, but that's the thing. What you're saying is valid, but that's the approach that this is very strange to me, because I've never I don't think I've ever seen a film that you and I could approach as differently as we approach this film. What you're describing makes sense, but I don't watch it that way, and I don't want to watch it that way. And I think you're probably incapable of watching it my way as well.
I'm not. No, no, no.
No, not incapable, or just not interested
No,
in that.
because listen to what the distinction that you're making is like, I don't want to watch. You have the choice. I don't want to watch
Well,
it that way, but
I might be
you're
incapable of,
incapable of.
I might be incapable
No,
of
no, no.
watching it your way too, because I can't see.
No, I don't think
Truthfully, I
so.
can't
No,
watch
no.
Travis Bickle in it. You know, I see what you're saying.
I think you can. I don't think you're incapable of it. I just think that it's what part of it is kind of like knee jerk, whatever your
Yeah,
impression is at this given
yeah. Well,
viewing, right?
I think there's something to be said about the naivete and the and this is not that Stallone is this, but he creates a character that is almost all sweetness and goodness, and if there's a violence in him, which there is a violence in him, it only explodes in the ring. It's vastly different from a Raging Bull. This is definitely not a Jake LaMotta.
No, I mean, and this is not a Raging Bull film. I
No,
mean, like it's not on that level.
it's not even close to being on that level. But you know what I mean with the
Raging
with
Bull is a true tragedy.
yes,
This is no, this is a feel good like junk. This is like junk food. Rocky is junk
exactly.
food.
But that's the thing that and if that's what it's designed to be, is there anything wrong with it? Is there anything wrong with it digging into that? Yeah, junk food is
It's
bad
not
for you.
junky enough.
It's not junky enough. Well, what were you open for? Digstown?
What I'm saying is like it's yesterday. Like sometimes you get out of work and you want something, some greasy, nasty fucking
You
thing,
want some
right?
Tommies? Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
exactly. Yeah.
You want Tommy. Um, but this is like not even that bad, and therefore not even that good.
Oh, okay.
In that sense, it's kind of too middle brow for me.
I got you.
Um, because it tries too hard to be likable. It tries too hard to be. It's a Hallmark fucking movie.
It's that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that.
And yes, I mean, and but beyond that, it's look at these other look at look at other boxing films or films that have boxers. Even Pulp Fiction, for the butch portion of it. There are layers, even though that's the story of that character is not super fucking innovative. It's a guy who's hired to take a fall. He doesn't. In the process, he takes the money, but in the process, he kills his opponent. He tries to run, but he ends up saving the guy who hired him to take a fall, while still killing the guy who got sent to kill him. It's fucking spoiler alert, all of you. And gets to ride off into the sunset, and goes after his father's fucking watch. That was in Christopher Walken's ass in Vietnam, and gets is with an annoying fucking girlfriend. Zed's dead. Rides off. You still get all the heroics. You still get all the blah blah blah. But there is the question of, was the going up worth the coming down? On the waterfront, Terry Malloy. By the time we start, he's already fucking taken the fall. He's already compromised.
Yeah.
Fucking Raging Bull. I mean, he's a piece of shit. But in the ring, he's this god of heart and pain. But then it's like off screen. I mean, out of the ring, you're just like, my God, how can I hate someone and root for them when they're in the ring? and hate them outside of it. And then go to the documentaries or go to these people that. So Apollo Creed is like very thinly modeled on Ali.
I don't even think it's thinly modeled. I don't think it's fucking, yeah. Yeah.
And you only get like moments of like wannabe Ali in kind of like in the promotional aspects of when Creed is on like on camera in the film. But if you look at these documentaries, or you look at the guys that fought Ali, these journeymen, these Chuck Wepner, he's the guy who went 15 rounds with Ali after the Rumble in the Jungle against Foreman. You look at the George Chavalos, never got knocked down. Henry Cooper was the first guy who knocked Ali down. These guys who a lot of people, you don't know their names, right?
Yeah.
They're just these nobody guys. At best, they get a documentary made about them fucking 30 years after they're dead, and they're only famous because, or they're only known because they were adjacent to someone who was great or considered great.
Well, they made a documentary
Frazier.
about that. Yeah.
Frazier has a statue in Philadelphia, but how much later did Frazier get a statue versus Rocky?
Not during his lifetime. Yeah.
And Ali himself, heroic but fucking suffering, capable of great vindictiveness and cruelty and betrayal. Very complex. Frazier himself, someone who incredibly driven but consumed by rage and bitterness and revenge. Look at Tyson. Kid who was given the shot, kid who was mentored by Cus D'Amato, who has this great fucking pedigree of boxing. He used to train Floyd Patterson, who Ali mocked as the rabbit, who was this good guy who just couldn't cut it. I mean, he was a champion, but after a certain point, he just couldn't cut it. And then now Mike Tyson, so many years later, comes out. His own fucking personal demons, like, overcome him to the point that he fucking lashes out and bites off fucking Evander Holyfield's ear. Not bites it off, but bites like a piece of it. All that shit goes to prison, all this crazy shit. And you have these look at Boom Boom Mancini. He kills a guy in the ring. There's another, I don't remember the other boxer's name, killed someone in the ring because I think that person mocked him because of his sexuality or something like that. And I don't remember his name right now. I can't think of it.
That was recently, I think. In the last 10 years or so.
No. This is older.
Is it? I thought I hadn't heard about that story until about 10 years ago, so.
And then you have Rocky. And Rocky is a story about a guy who wants to be champion, who gets the opportunity to become champion.
But that's not what the film is about. It's not about him wanting to be the champion. It's about him wanting to...
Well, okay. Well, I'm talking about the plot.
Yeah, but this is the thing. All those people that you described, yeah, there is the darkness, there is the violence, there is the there's the psychological damage on all of that. But when you're making a film, or at least this film, this is not this is not a Tyson story. This is, in a weird way, this is designed and set up to be more relatable to your layman who maybe doesn't suffer from that level of psychological damage that a Tyson or or Durand, they don't come from that level of childhood
That's
abuse.
another one.
Yeah, that childhood abuse, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, the emotional abuse. This character is an everyman who finds himself. You talk about the story that has come before. Well, the story that has come before is here. It's told about Mickey loses it on him. You could have been a great fighter, but you became a leg breaker. You pissed away your life. And the character, see, this is the thing, that the character resonates with an audience because so many people in the audience will look at their life and say, I did that. If I had any talent. I mean, think about how many people peaked in high school with high school football or basketball or baseball, and that's all they ever went. That's the draw of this movie to people who maybe had a certain level of talent, but life got in the way of what they wanted to do with it. Now, the Rocky character goes through all that and is given a second shot, and then is even given a third shot for the second film, as ridiculous as that is. The film, I don't watch it because I think it's realistic in any way, and I'm not saying that that's what you think I think. No, I watch it because it's a fantasy. I watch it because it's a heartfelt fantasy of what if I was given the opportunity. It's the Wizard of Oz in a weird sense, where there's this magical chance that you have to relive your life, and it's steeped in a reality, but it's separate from it. That's the way I view the film. It's inspirational if you realize the sacrifices that you're going to have to make in order to make something happen. But also the very real likelihood that it's not going to work out. When you watch a sports film, the best sports films are the ones where the character doesn't win. Maybe they win some kind of piece. The two that I'm thinking of, Rocky and the Bad News Bears, they lose the big game, they lose the fight, but they've proven something to themselves, and that's what this film is about. That this film is about the realization that you can do something, that you don't have to necessarily prove. You don't have to necessarily come out on top and prove you're the greatest. It's a matter of proving that you can do something. And I think that's the fascination that people have with it. At least with the first film. Everything that comes afterward, I think, diminishes the legacy of it. I think it diminishes what was once a pretty good fairy tale story. A lot of fun, really interesting world that is kind of showed there, and I have a good time with it. The first film, at least. Watching the second film last night, I was just I kind of got annoyed with it. It took forever to get started, and the only moment, and it's a moment that I love, is when Apollo is dealing with the fact that he's no longer respected because it's believed that he threw the fight, or he carried him, or that it wasn't everything. And when he talks to Tony Burton, when he talks to Duke, his trainer, and he says, "Did I win the fight?" And he says, "You got the decision." And Tony Burton comes up to him and he says that line, and I think it's a fucking great line. It was like, I saw you hit that man with everything you had. I ain't never seen a man get beat like that, and he kept coming back. We don't need that in our life, baby. That's a fucking great. For me, that moment is worth the movie. And Burgess Meredith. You know, Burgess Meredith in both of these films. There's a lot of miles on that character. You look at Burgess Meredith and you see this 76, 77-year-old man, and you don't see a fighter. But when he's in that that gym, when he's working with those young athletes, those young boxers, he instills the character with the history. That's my favorite scene of the first film, is when he goes and he's basically pitching himself to Rocky and telling him all of this knowledge that I have. For me, that scene is worth the movie. Because it really is somebody looking back at their life and knowing all the mistakes, knowing that they were up against the wall and they should have done it differently, but they didn't know how to do it differently at that moment. See, when I watch this movie, that's what jumps out at me. And maybe, and it's probably a subconscious, or maybe because I'm aware of it, it's a conscious recognition of how hard it is to make it doing something, and that second guessing of the self, and that wondering, could I have done this differently? Would it have worked out differently? That's what I find fascinating about the film. That's why for me it does work. And I can't say it's on the level. It doesn't mean to me what Taxi Driver or some of these other great films that it's not The Wild Bunch, it's not Unforgiven. It doesn't fall into the ones that I really love. But when I watch it, I am moved, because I think there is, call it my own sense of selling out to a little bit of happiness and a little bit of hope. But that's what I see in this film. Knowing full well how ridiculous and unlikely any of it is. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Rocky as a metaphor. Rocky the story as a metaphor for the making of the film, the development of the film, and the fact that it was able to be made.
You know what, I was thinking about that, because I didn't know if you wanted to get into that, but it's also the story of Rocky is the story of the writing and the making of this film is almost parallel to what is depicted on the screen. This was Stallone.
And probably more interesting. Stallone had a typewriter banging away at the fucking words that won't come.
Stallone is not the idiot that he portrays on screen.
No, I know that. Yeah.
I know you know that. I'm just saying.
And that's but isn't that that's also a testament to how good he is at Rocky.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we think of him as. You know what I mean? But go ahead.
But that's the thing. The performance is on par throughout the film. It's just that the films get progressively worse. He was a young actor doing mostly character roles and struggling to get seen. And I think he had done... I know he had done Woody Allen's Bananas. He played a thug in that film that mugs Woody Allen on the train. He had done a film with Perry King, Henry Winkler, and another actor, I can't remember. At one point it was Richard Gere, and Richard Gere got fired, but it was The Lords of Flatbush. And he got picked up by some agency. And they said, well, we don't have anything that we can send you out for right now. But he said, well, I'm also a writer. And they asked if there's anything that that they could see. And he pitched them the idea of Rocky, and then he went back and he wrote it in something like 2.5 or 3 days, and he was writing at night. He was doing odd jobs in between there. He had sold his dog because he couldn't afford to. The dog in the film he had sold for like $50 because he couldn't afford to feed the dog. When the film became a success, he went back and he bought the dog back, but the guy charged him $5,000. That's a shit move, but it's a fucked up move. But he wrote this story, and he was trying to come up with an idea of doing it as an actor. Well, nobody really wants to see the inner turmoil of an actor or a writer. It's very hard to pull off a writer in a screenplay. A lot of it is just a great writer, I guess, could make it dramatic, but a lot of people have a real difficult time with it. But he wanted the violence, and he wanted a sport where he could prove himself and not be part of a team, which you could argue differently with the manager and a cup man, but it is something that goes back to what you said in the beginning. Two men standing in a ring, beating the shit out of each other, punching each other in the faces, and seeing who can withstand more. It is Christ-like in a way. That suffering, that level of punishment in order to come out the other side. And this was a film that the idea, at least, United Artists loved. But they didn't want Sylvester Stallone. They wanted Ryan O'Neal. They wanted, I think at one point, Jimmy Caan. They wanted anybody but Sylvester Stallone. And they had offered him something like $2 million. Or $2 million, like a $2 million budget or something like that for the film, and they were going to give him like $310,000, something. And Stallone held out. Stallone had something like $36 in the bank. This is the story, at least. And he held out, and he held out, and he held out. And he said, he'll only sell the movie if he can star. So they brought down the budget to such a low rate. I think it was something like $1 million. Irwin Winkler and Robert Chardoff, Winkler at least would go on to produce Raging Bull. They made this film. They got this thing made. They got Avildsen to direct. I don't know what he had done before that, but I think he would go on to do. He would start Saturday Night Fever, and then that would go to John Badham, I think. But anyway, they got this film made. This was a low-budget film, and everybody needed, the biggest star in the film was Burgess Meredith. The person who had the biggest pedigree and a history was Burgess Meredith, and he had to audition. He had to read. They searched everywhere for an Apollo Creed. At one point, they wanted Ken Norton, but rightfully, producers and Stallone realized that there was no way that anybody believed that he would beat Ken Norton. There's just fucking no way.
Ken Norton beat Ali in every fight they had, even though Ali won some of those fights.
Didn't he break Ali's jaw? Wasn't Ken Norton the one who broke his jaw? Yeah. So Ken Norton was a killer. No one was going to believe that that Sylvester Stallone could have won that fight. But they got the film made. The film is the making of the film is an underdog story. And you can see it on the Rocky disc, the Rocky Blu-ray, where there's a 3-part documentary where they talk about what they went through to get this film made. It's the first use of a Steadicam. The guy who created the Steadicam created it, shot footage of his girlfriend running up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum, and Avildsen saw that footage and said he needed it for the film. Boom. That revolutionized filmmaking right there. No longer that herky-jerky wobbling camera move. Now you had that smooth sliding movement, something that would not have been possible with handheld cameras. This film they shot without permits. that whole scene of him running through the Italian market, no permits, just people looking at him, and it fit the story. The painting of those two paintings of Creed and then Rocky at the stadium. Stallone comes in and sees that they painted the wrong color. They wrote that into the story. I mean, and it's little moments like that where you take advantage and you say none of it really matters because nobody expected anything out of him. They're going to drop this bum in 3. And that's basically it. It's a little bit of Chuck Wepner, a little bit of Ali Frazier. Frazier is said to have done that meat thing. So there's another reason Frazier got fucked. Nobody ever acknowledged that. But Frazier was said to have done that. But it's a film. It's a film that succeeded despite everything that was put up against it, and that was United Artists back in '76. It was 3 years before Heaven's Gate would take him down. So it was like you said, or like you implied, it was a happy film in a time of cinematic darkness where the films were a lot more pessimistic and cynical. What I would argue was realistic. In that sense, a film like Rocky is important because it's a little bit of a palate cleanser. It doesn't deserve. It did not deserve beating Taxi Driver. I said that the first time I saw Taxi Driver. I say it today. But for a film to retain the popularity that it does almost 50 years later, I think it stands as a testament to people's need to lose themselves at the cinema. The troubling thing is that people take this as some kind of weird truth. I had a friend who used to have a great joke. He was from Philadelphia, and he would say, people in Philadelphia watch Rocky like it's a documentary. That's how fucking stupid they are. I would laugh my ass off whenever he said it, but Eddie Murphy would touch on it. The great Paul Mooney would comment on it. It's something that...
What do you say?
I kind of said I wasn't going to do this anymore, but...
Oh,
the first time I saw Paul Mooney, he had made a joke about he has a fantasy of being given head while watching the Brady Bunch. And I remember just being like, what the fuck? This guy's insane. But he was talking about Hollywood being ridiculous. And he was like, Rocky, stop it, America, stop it. I think he was talking about Rocky 3. He said, little Italian men don't beat up great big old greasy black niggas. It doesn't happen. Stop it. And he said it in that Paul Mooney way that was just so fucking... I mean, Paul Mooney could just draw you in, but it's come on, it's real, man. It's, and that's something that is in the film, but it's not played up the way reality would have it played. This is a race. There is a level of race. I don't know if I would call it racism, but there's definitely a level of race consciousness there that maybe, because I'm not white, I don't know, but Eddie Murphy did comment on it on Raw, where white people love watching Rocky like that shit's real. Do you remember the bit?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No.
You don't remember the bit where he was talking about Eddie Murphy would go into the Italian accent, which he does brilliantly, I think, and he would say, he would talk about he would do an Italian guy just coming out of Rocky and how inspired that makes him, and how he's going to go over there and start talking shit, and it's a funny bit. I'll send you a clip of it one day, but it does capture. It does. I don't know. I find it hard to believe that Stallone wasn't aware of it.
Of course,
but I don't know how. I don't know how much of it played into what he was creating. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah,
he
I
was
mean,
telling a story, and they say you make yourself the hero of your own story, and that's what he did. He took it to its ultimate level. He made himself the hero of his own story, and who can blame him for that? But the reality of the world that we live in has overwhelming elements of racism that can't be ignored. So, should Stallone be faulted for that, or should it just play into the story as it's being told? What's your opinion on that?
it, it's it's in keeping with the overall tenor of the film, which is, like when the guests come over, like you make sure everything's clean.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see the skeletons in the closet. They don't see the bodies in the basement. They don't see you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the girl tied up in the attic. They don't, none of that. Um, the mom's mummified corpse downstairs, like, spoiler alert, no. Um, like, you don't do that.
Yeah.
What do you mean racism? We're a post-racial society. This is America. What are you talking about? This is the land of the free, home of the brave. Like, where everyone's equal. All you have to do is just work hard. Like, that's it. Just believe. And then we'll superimpose a face of Donald Trump on the rocky body. And you too can be rich and white. Um, it's I mean, look, when Ali and Frazier fought, Ali made an aspect of it into a racial thing.
Yeah.
And he managed to, for promotional purposes, which made it all the more cruel, because to him it was just like, well, this is just this is like a Barnum and Bailey type thing. We're just doing this to create a feud for the public. But Joe Frazier is basically saying, no, you're fucking like hurting me. Like, you're fucking hurting me. You're ridiculing me. And Ollie's like, come on, like, come on. And there's also the component of they're playing the dozens, which is also coming out of black culture. And the thing is, in the dozens, when you insult each other, the one who gets angry is the one who loses. And Joe Frazier got angry, so he lost about that. So he got angry about losing about that. And Ali, who came from a more middle-class background than Frazier, who was lighter skinned than Frazier, made himself out to be the more black power consciousness figure. He sold Frazier as an Uncle Tom and completely, like, controlled the perception, because that's part of what Ali did in terms of his fights, is that Trump does this in that he talks about Sleepy Joe, and like he names his opponents basically, and then the fan base starts to repeat those names, and they start to see aspects of that name in the person. So yeah, of course, race relations are in the. I mean, that's when, who did Joe Louis? What's his name? Mildenberger or whatever his name was. When Joe Louis fought the German guy, it was like American versus the Nazis or whatever. And
Schmeling?
And
Max Schmeling? Was that his name?
Maybe it was Max Schmeling. Yeah, maybe. And so there's these things are obvious.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be touched on because it's like, well, come on, like, we're just not going to go there, because it's, first of all, it's like, well, what does this have to do with that story? But I mean, there's an element where Apollo Creed's getting these letters and they're saying like something about, look what you're doing for your people. There's that element. But to go into any of that is like, I think probably would have been seen as like maybe having too many elements of propaganda or too many elements of cultural criticism, whereas the film in all of its hallmark sensibilities, I think, is also like propaganda, without meaning to be. because it is pushing that like American dream. Like,
Yeah.
it's in part two. It's not like, okay, I did all this stuff. Now it's like, well, now I'm gonna go buy all this shit. That's what I'm gonna do with all this money. Is I'm gonna go buy all this shit. And even then, it's like, well, even the concept of like the whiteness thing is like, well, now he's in these stores buying these expensive watches, and it's like the lady's like, yeah,
Yeah, buy one for your
no,
brother.
I'm white.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm fucking white. You're a Guido. I'm fucking
Yeah.
white. Like you just recently became white. You're Italian. You know what I mean? It's Godfather Part Two with that senator, like with your greasy Italian hair or whatever he tells them. You know what I mean? Your olive oil hair and your little games or whatever
The
he tells
suits.
them.
He said something about those shark skin suits or some shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, fucking Kennedy was. It's like, well, you're fucking Irish Catholic. Fuck you. You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are definitely like there's a definite hierarchy in the minds of these fucking people who benefit from that hierarchy. So yeah, I mean that's these elements aren't going to come into it. It touched on a cultural nerve, and in that sense, it is important. And yeah, I would rather have obviously like you can't see Rocky as Ryan O'Neal. Like you're gonna put him in there with Farrah Fawcett beating her ass in the ring? I don't think so.
You know what's crazy? Ryan O'Neal played a fighter around this time with Bette Midler as his manager. The main event. It was a weird time. There were a lot of boxing movies around this time. John Voight and Ricky Schroeder in the remake of The Champ. There was a boxing kangaroo movie. It was all kinds of weird shit back in the 70s. It was, we talk about the darkness of the 70s. We talk about the mean streets, the Godfather, Apocalypse, Taxi Driver, and all that. But there were...
Yeah, Death Wish, all that shit.
Yeah, but there were popular, very friendly, very easygoing films being made at that time. The studio was still churning out bullshit. Very interesting stuff. Wow.
There's also the blockbuster era.
The beginning of the blockbuster, yeah. Yeah. Jaws would be around that time.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, and this is from that Spielberg school. I don't mean in terms of like the school of filmmaking. I just mean that kind of worldview of like
the positivity that things are going to work out, that the perseverance, and I think it was part of the reason that we disliked E.T. to a degree. Some of it,
yeah,
a little bit too.
I mean, yeah, it's there are different views. Some people, you say, well, I'm going to go into a theater because the theater is the art house.
Yeah.
But in terms of like a mass, for a mass audience, no, the theater is not a house of art. The movie theater is a place to ease your troubles, to make you feel good, to have that orgasm of the heart, and then to go back out into the wild world and be the hero that you are in your own mind. These types of films have a place. These types of films do touch a cultural nerve. These inspiring, uplifting films. For the purposes of this episode, at least, I am here to pour water all over that. I think there are other ways to be inspired than by traveling in a straight line in the middle of the fucking road. I think that as cliche as the road less traveled is at this point, I think there's also something to be made for that. I think sometimes, as Blake said, the road of, paraphrasing now because I'm losing my train of thought, but the road of excess or whatever leads to the palace of wisdom. Sometimes it's about redemption, not necessarily inspiration. And sometimes it is about like proving to someone else versus just proving to yourself. Even if that someone else is an externalized, dark, shadow version of yourself. Rocky is an important movie. We're going to explore more of that. It's important in the ways that we talked about it being important, and it is unimportant in the ways that we also talked about it being unimportant, if that, any of that makes sense. Beyond that, there's always coffee. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. This episode is for someone. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. If there's value in what we do, if there's a kernel of anything worth giving a fuck about, then extend that coffee mug across the universe to us. We appreciate it. We find value in what we do. Show us that you do too.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week with the Balboa saga. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.